Rishi Sunak, as we were just saying, is facing more electoral bad news today. That poll putting his party just 7 points ahead of Reform and still far behind Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party.
But there is some good news for the Prime Minister, as a survey by Ipsos says that the Tories have no choice but to back Sunak, with no other candidates more popular than the Prime Minister.
Joining us now is former Labour advisor John McTernan. I mean, the polls haven't been making good reading for some time now for Rishi Sunak. I mean, this one pretty stark, isn't it? Putting Labour 27 points ahead of the Conservatives.
Yeah, this is a hammer blow for Rishi, but it comes after every single poll since he became a leader and Prime Minister in October 22 gave Labour leads of between 10 and 20 points. So it's not a surprise to see this big gap. It's also not a surprise to see Tory backbenchers and Tory donors panicking about this. And I think that the real story is people are realising finally that Rishi Sunak's number 10 strategy of the polls always close before a general election, that's not proving true. The polls are widening as we turn into
it depends when the
year.
election comes, doesn't it? Because, I mean, we don't know. We could still be 10 months away. I mean...
That's right, but the idea of going long is that there's some sign that they're narrowing, and nothing has happened that shows any narrowing. All there's been is this slight increase. And I think if I was Nigel Farage, for example, I'd be looking, if there's a 7-point gap, maybe it's time to declare, maybe it's time to say I'll run in Clacton, maybe it's time to say we could make a big blow on the Tory party and make the fight on the right, which I think is what Lord Frost is thinking. This is about the soul of the Tory party and the shape of the British right after an election. It's very interesting.
You make the point about Nigel Farage there, Reform UK there, as we said, on 13%. But in terms of Nigel Farage, he is a master of timing.
Yeah.
If he was to go back into politics, frontline politics, what difference would that make in terms of what happens to Reform and indeed what happens to the Conservative Party?
So I think we saw in 2019 how important it was for Reform to stand down in Tory seats and to allow the Tories a free run. I think this is, when you're on the rise like Boris Johnson was, that gives you a boost. When you're on the fall like the Tories are, Reform have an ability probably to split the anti-Labour vote. So once you get down to two parties fighting to be the voice of the right, it'll give Labour more seats. And that, I think, would be the worry in number 10. And if I was Nigel Farage, I'd be looking, who could I get to defect? Is there anybody that would come from the Tory party? And then you make it a proper battle, and it wouldn't be decisive, but it would be like the moment 100 years ago when Labour came through and formed its first government. Things are moving in the shape of British politics, and this may be a very, very important election.
And of course, the Tories themselves have said Rishi Sunak's got 6 weeks to sort this out, or he's out. How many of them do you think are actively considering defecting?
I'm not sure. There's always one or two. One of the best ways to get people to defect to you is to befriend them. And so it's easier to get an MP to move from Tory to Labour if they're in the House of Commons and you spend time socialising with them, you spot that they're unhappy with their colleagues, and you offer them the guarantee. We always would offer them the guarantee of a safe seat, so they could switch to a different seat, and they quite often got a ministerial career. So it's different. Reform aren't able to do that yet. So how many there are? People are coming to terms, I think, in the Tory party with defeat. That's why a lot of MPs, I think, are saying no need to change, because why change? There's going to be an election for a leader after the election, and we can work out who's around, who's going to survive this sweep, because we don't know what the swings will be.
Let's talk about Labour and Sir Keir Starmer wanting to get tough on crime. No one will be above the law in a Britain that I lead. We just spoke to Annalise Dodds about this, but I'm not sure we got the detail on how this is actually going to work or how it's going to be funded, did we?
Well, I mean, Yvette Cooper's been talking about shoplifting, so has the Shop Workers Union, USDAW, because shoplifting is not just becoming rife, it's becoming to a point where managers of the big supermarket chains are saying, don't challenge the shoplifter. There may be violence, and don't bother calling the police because they won't turn up. So there's something about enforcement. There's something about actually using more CCTV. Now, lots of supermarket chains do have CCTV, lots of local government have. We have to be able to process the data faster. I'm sure there's a role for machine learning in doing this, that we have to make it more efficient, but there's no doubt that the taking of cops off the street, the collapse in police community support officers, that network of things has gone wrong, and we have to find a better way, a smarter way, a faster way to prosecute. I mean, the new Labour government, if it comes in after the election, that Labour government will have to be be better with the same amount of money. There's no doubt about that. And so
it's got a massive courts backlog to clear.
Yep.
There are jails that are full to the brim. If you want to get tough on crime, you want tougher sentences. Well, you've got to deal with that.
It might not be tougher, in my view, it might not be tougher sentences that you need. It might be that the likelihood of being prosecuted and convicted is more of a deterrent. And that it may be that we need, everybody who's ever been in the court knows that the most important time in the court is actually the witnesses who are there to support the police. But the courts are structured around the judge's time. So maybe make judges work longer, judges be more productive.
Just in terms of the interview with Annalise Dodds, it seemed, and I think this is a fair comment, it seemed to be short on detail. I think what the public are sick and tired of is hearing we need to have more police officers. The Conservatives have said that will go up by another 20,000. We've also got people like Stuart Rose saying shoplifting has effectively been decriminalised. We've seen it go up 27%. It's costing £953 million. When are Labour going to pin their colours to the mast and say what they are actually going to do?
Well, I think the strategy that Yvette Cooper has been setting out will be intelligence-led. There's a range of shoplifters, but as in most crimes, 1 in 5 shoplifters do 4 in 5 of the crimes. Target repeat offenders, track them, do all the things that you do to fight repeat offenders.
Well, thank you very much indeed, John. Let's move on now.